Hey guys, and welcome to another video. So today was a big day for Heart of Thorns. It was kind of the inclusion of a bunch of big features Heart of Thorns was sold as having, but kind of we had to wait a little while before they were actually dropped into the game, just a short period of time. But those specifically would be the 3 new legendary weapons, the first raid wing, as well as the enhanced squad UI. With the patch came a whole host of other things. I'm basically going to treat this patch like I did with the expansion itself and tell you guys, look, check it out. It's in the description if you want to see it for yourself. But my god, there's an awful lot of stuff there. And basically, it's just a lot of fixes, including, as I was very happy to see, the white flashes on big, pronounced bosses around the world have been further removed. This is great because I actually spent a while on one of the streams complaining about this, even talked about it in a video, and it's actually kind of amazing to think that some of those things may have been listened to. So, squad UI is of course great. The new legendaries I've barely even looked into. The beginning of creating our legendary armor has begun, of course, with raids too, but raids themselves are the main thing that has taken my attention. I'll definitely look more at the enhanced squad UI in the coming days when I get back to streaming and organizing some of these big events with the community. Maybe have finally a decent look at World versus World. But for now, it was all about raids. And so I've spent many hours in there so far. Maybe somewhere around 8 hours, 8.5 hours, before I finally pry myself away to have a bit of a break and talk to you guys in this video. Largely with the same crew of people, a couple of people swapping in and out there. And generally just sort of having a good time, having a bit of a laugh, playing the raids and seeing how far we could get. So obviously the question on your lips is probably going to be, hey WP, did you finish it yet? In fact, if my chat log is anything to go by, the amount of you whispering me, have you done it yet? Have you done it yet? The answer is no, I haven't completed it just yet. However, the original boss, the Veil Guardian, I did clear much quicker than I anticipated. Based on the betas and the group of people I ran in the betas and the kind of build that I ran in the betas, I would have thought I'd be against that boss for hours and hours and hours, but I actually got through it fairly handily. So we got to that moment there where we were looking further on than we'd ever seen before. The barrier was down, we could travel deeper. And the first thing I would say, beyond any of the mechanics of any of the fights or any of the other stuff coming up, is the raids feel really cool in terms of the way they deliver story. Now, I know, I'm a bit of a story nerd, and I know a lot of people don't care about the raids for the story, and specifically ArenaNet have even said that these are kind of secondary stories to the main plot lines that you don't need to know about. But there's something about being in a long, singular narrative, like this one instance, this one badass map that's got all these beautiful environments with invisible walls that sort of funnel you in a certain direction, that can really tell an awesome story. And the way your character remarks on things as you're wandering around, a bit like we see in the personal story, but on such a large scale, is fantastic. There are tons of little hidden interactable objects. There are achievements that have you, for example, one of the earliest achievements you'll find is going around to various packed soldiers' bodies and recovering their dog tags, and if you find 10, then you get an achievement. It's a really, really great experience wandering around in there, and definitely I'm feeling a lot of excitement killing future bosses and overcoming future challenges just because I want to explore more of the area. But let's talk about the actual gameplay itself. Now, first of all, I was our designated support character. We went with kind of this cool idea that has pervaded a lot of the community at the moment, that for raids you can have a comp of 8 people dealing damage. Of those 8 people dealing damage, you might have 3 on Condi and 5 on Zerk Assassin stuff, or, you know, some kind of spread mix between those. But then the other 2 people, you can have kind of a trolly tanky guy who's built a lot of toughness, but nonetheless does some damage. And you can have a support guy, a dedicated support character. And I was the dedicated support, and I played the same build I was trying way back when in the betas, the Auramancing Tempest. And it's been a really interesting experience because the timing on these bosses, the amount of damage you need to bring to these bosses to get through the enraged timers, to really push it to the max and experience that difficulty is very tight. You have to bring a lot of focus and you have to bring a lot of power in the builds that you're running. And so through pretty much any encounter so far that I've been in, I've had that moment where I've thought, would I do better if I maybe tried to play Zerk? What if we didn't? What if we threw away the dedicated support character? And I'll tell you what, it's in these moments that I felt most rewarded. Yesterday I talked about how dedicated support felt really unrewarding in regular Tyria. It's amazing in raids. It is so fun. Many of the problems that existed back in regular open world Tyria don't exist here. For example, the whole waypointing thing. It doesn't matter if somebody dies or you just waypoint. That's irrelevant. If you die, you're dead for good. So you absolutely care about keeping people alive. You don't actually want people going downstate either. Yes, people can press F and pick each other up, but that's a massive drop on the amount of damage uptime your friends could be doing. So you want to make sure people don't go into the downstate at all. And in terms of seeing your effectiveness, well, just look at the footage here, guys. You know, this is nothing like running around in giant open world zergs and spamming heals and seeing numbers but not knowing what they're doing. To see my contributions in all of this footage, all you have to do is look at the squad UI just a little bit, and you'll see health is chunking down. I am the only person remotely healing outside of the individual heal skills people have on their bars, and you will see that there are massive global spikes up of health going off all over the place. I know pretty much that I've got permanent protection on the entire team, and you know, these other auras supporting them too, and that's been fantastic. If that wasn't rewarding enough, I've been having an awful lot of fun in those rare moments where I die. And this is kind of a sad thing for the other people in my party, I'll admit. But it's been really cool in these sudden moments where I've died, and it's truly become apparent just how useful I am as a dedicated support character. Because I'll die, and everyone else in our playstyles, in the kind of build that everyone else is running, suddenly everyone else's health bars get chunked down, and, you know, give it 15 to 20 seconds later, half of the 10-man group is dead and the other people are on their last legs, and then they're dead too. And it kind of is one of these really cool moments where it's like, wow, I'm actually making a big impact. And if it's not because I've just died, maybe it's because I've thought, all right, this boss we're on, we need a lot more damage. He's got a big hitbox. I'm going to try and play a Zerk Ellie instead, and we'll just see whether we can survive, guys. We'll just see whether we can, you know, handle the pressure through correct positioning and dodging the right stuff. And that's just absolutely not something we've been able to pull off. The furthest that I got into the raid, the boss that I'm against there at that point, Gorseval, this guy has kind of a globally ticking damage that goes out onto everyone that is unavoidable, undodgeable, and it just pulses you down, pulses you down, pulses you down, pulses you down, and it basically makes it almost impossible to play something like a glass Ellie on a staff without somebody helping to top your health up at the same time. So it's been great, it's been super rewarding, I've really enjoyed my time, and I'm really happy to see that playstyle has definitely come in. Let's talk a bit more about other stuff though. So the Veil Guardian seemed to be, I don't know, maybe he was tuned down to be a bit easier. Maybe we just all knew the fight far better at this point, but it really didn't take too many attempts before this guy went down. It took a considerable amount, but yes, the guy did die. We had that rewarding cool moment. We got our chest. We learned a little bit about what the loot was like. We began our mastery, and our quest on legendary armor began. Legendary armor is actually kind of interesting because they seem to be, while we cannot look at it in game yet, the legendary armor through looking at the collection is to do with the envoys. The envoys are one of my favorite pieces of lore in this entire franchise. For those of you who don't know about the envoys, there is a moment in Factions where you straight up are killed. You die, you are a corpse on the ground, your main character and all the heroes that would save the day fail. The villain wins. But then, a short while after, if you've been rotting on the ground, something called an envoy comes and it saves your life and it brings you back to life. The envoys are murderers, villains, people who have committed great crimes and must now in death serve as a punishment the duty of shepherding souls to the various afterlives, or to the underworld specifically. And there were a few different envoys. They were specifically Canthan lore. Cantha only. You never heard about the envoys anywhere else in Guild Wars at all. And the story of Cantha actually was about a rogue envoy, that being Shiro Tagachi. So there's actually, the first legendary armor is based on the envoys, it seems. And if you look back at those in Cantha, if you look back at those characters, they wore very eloquent, very interesting, weird garbs and had crazy faces and stuff. It's really cool. It also somehow seems to tie to the idea of the raid. Now, I've not completed it, so I don't know the full story yet, but as you're exploring it, there's a lot to do with souls, and there's like a river of souls, it would seem. Much like the river of souls we saw traveling through, say, the Domain of Anguish that we knew was going to the underworld. So it seems like they're hinting at something there. Maybe I'm looking a little bit too deep, but it's been kind of a curious thing for me. Anyway, so after you defeat the Veil Guardian, the next main thing you do is go through a series of chamber-like rooms or sections of the raid where you just learn about a couple of different mechanics. So the first one, you just got to survive for a while, and there's some AoE rings you've got to walk into, and walking into them helps you dissipate them and survive. It's very similar to how just before the Veil Guardian, you have kind of the 3 individual trash champion mobs that you fight, which teach you about upcoming mechanics. In the end, these things all come together in a glorious chase sequence. So you're running away from this giant, moving, scary mist that if it catches up to you, it kills you. But you've got these various AoEs you need to stand in to get rid of, and there's these massive walls that you have to DPS and break your way through. Lots of fun, but actually isn't tuned particularly difficult. Do you remember ArenaNet was saying that this raid had 4 encounters, it had 3 bosses and kind of like something that wasn't a boss? Well, this is the thing that wasn't a boss, and it's not actually tuned that difficult. It doesn't really reward you when you complete it, and not in the way a giant boss would anyway. And so it's kind of more of a minor thing, but it was a lot of fun. Absolutely a lot of fun. Probably the most fun I've had in the raid, actually, so far, I must say. Even though it's only accounted for a tiny little section of it, because we cleared it like on a second attempt. Following that, we come to Gorseville. Gorseville really doesn't have any great story, any real introduction. It's a bit disappointing, in my opinion. It's just sort of a mob on a platform that you go over to. But is kind of the next big, dangerous boss. This is the guy that I've really been struggling against. And it's mostly, again, because you need to have a lot of damage on him, but at the same time as needing a ton of damage, you also need a ton of other stuff. And so I'll describe the encounter to you guys now. One kind of main problem with it is there's no way to repair next to him. Now, the devs are expecting you to already have this new mastery unlocked, which allows you to use these ley rifts, but most people don't have them. I only just recently unlocked this mastery, and so you kind of have to do this really annoying, weird walk backwards through the dungeon to get back to the repair anvil and then kill yourself to get back to the front. So that's a bit odd. But the fight itself has been very, very interesting. The first main mechanic really to talk about is this. He's on a platform surrounded by death pits, okay? And every now and then, he will conjure a giant nuke ability that means anybody stood on the platform at all dies. Whether you're invulnerable, whether you're dodging, whether you're anything, you'll die if you're on the platform. So if this was regular Guild Wars 2, then that's basically over, right? Like, you just have to jump into the death pit and die there, or you'd stay on the platform and die there. But this is Heart of Thorns, and we have gliding. And so around the outside of this platform are opportunities for you to glide into updrafts. And if you're in the sky when this thing lands, you'll be safe. Very similar to what we see at the end of the personal story. But then there's a catch to this. To get out of the arena to the updrafts, you're actually being surrounded by these massive ghost spirit walls that the boss summons too. And you actually have to break these walls, similar to in the running section we saw shortly before the boss. And you have to like DPS these walls down so that then you can move up. So at first we kind of had this interesting idea of, okay, half of us will fight the boss, and then half of us will fight, while the other half of us destroy the wall, so that when he does the ability we can move. But eventually we settled on a strategy where we just kind of drag the boss to the edge of the platform. Anyway, that's one really basic thing. Next thing to really talk about are just the general abilities he uses. One is a big ability where he stands in the middle of the platform and nukes various areas of the platform, but you can stop it by breaking his break bar, and you absolutely have to do that as fast as possible. Our way of dealing with this is we all stack in the middle of him, which is a high damage zone, but because of my healing, we can actually survive as a group, even though I'm the only healer. And then we can actually slam down his break bar. This, again, was a really rewarding experience, actually. When we first started playing this, that break bar was going down so slowly, guys. Like, incredibly slowly. And then we got to a point, you know, maybe half an hour later, where the break bar went down instantly. Like, under the course of a second, the break bar would go from 100% to 0. And what's really satisfying about this in raids, as opposed to the open world experiences I've had similar to this, is in raids, you know there's been no scaling. You know there's been literally no change in how much effort it takes to break that break bar. It's not about proportional amount of CC on players versus who's there. It's not about who waypointed away. It is literally, hey, we are better at it. We are faster at using our CCs and saving them for this moment. And we are a billion times better. That was really fun to see. So anyway, that's another one of his abilities. Another thing you'll notice he does actually is he summons these maddened spirits. Spirits running around the area. And at the same moment where he nukes the entire platform and you're supposed to be in the sky gliding around to survive, he actually will eat any of the spirits that are still on the platform at that point, and each one he eats will give him 10% more damage. In all my attempts so far, our most abysmal attempt, we actually ended up having Gorseville on 70% more damage because he'd eaten 7 of these souls. And so what you need to do is not just break the wall, not just be damaging the mob, not just be watching for his break bar, but he's got all these spirits that run around with him too, and you need to make sure they're all dead before you leave the platform, because otherwise he'll eat them, and throughout the course of the fight he'll get way too buffed, and then you're basically going to be killed, right? So that's another thing that you're continuously having to pay attention to. Once you've mastered all those things, you may find you get about 33% of his life down. At this point, he phases, just like the Guardian, the first boss at the Spirit Vale. He'll go into another phase where he becomes invulnerable, and 4 big spirits come out. These 4 big spirits will be walking slowly to Gorseville. If just a single one gets to him, it's game over. Gorseville looks you in, he kills you all. So you need to kill all of these spirits. Well, easy enough, wooden potatoes, you say. Well, no, not quite, because they're very tanky, and the only way to slow them down is through soft CCs. So there's no dazing, there's no stunning, there's no blowouts, there's no knockdowns, there's none of that. They don't have break bars, but the only way to slow them down is to cripple them, chill them, and mob them. That's what you've got to work with. And so it really encourages you to use different stuff. I mean, I was using Dagger anyway, so I was really watching for my Dagger 3. I was using Aftershock anyway as a part of my Aura build, so I was using that. But Aftershock is actually an AoE mob applier. So, like, I would wait until a couple of the spirits got kind of close to get to one another, and then I'd stand exactly in the middle of them and pop my Aftershock, and it would mob 2 spirits at once. We found ourselves using some crazy abilities here. We actually had a Mesmer Sylvari. Now, the Sylvari get a fantastic ability, Binding Roots, basically, mini version, which they can use to continuously emote something for ages. And we actually had our Mesmer mimicking this Sylvari ability. So you could use the Sylvari ability on one mob, and then you could mimic it onto another, and one Mesmer could basically deal with 2 of the mobs, while the rest of the group kills the other 2 spirits. There's some absolutely fantastic different plays that I've never really seen, and a big thing about Gorseville, I think, is there's a big theme of CC here. There's a big theme of CC. Like, that phase has got a lot with CC. There's a specific break bar that you need to be dealing with. You need to be putting him to the right places. It's a very different perspective to the original fight we saw. So once you've dealt with that, they make it even harder. Now, once he's below the first 33% health, you're going to encounter another new mechanic, and this is orbs spawning all around the platform. The orbs will grow bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and if you walk into one of these orbs, it dramatically, ridiculously reduces the amount of damage you can do. So if you, for me, as a support Ellie, I was fine. I could go into any of these orbs and I didn't really have to worry too much. But if any of my major damage characters went in there, then it would basically cause failure, because we only have a certain amount of time to kill the boss before he enrages and wipes us all. And so you can clear these orbs by, using like ranged abilities, like we'd have our DPS elementalists using ranged stuff, or you can just try to avoid the orbs until they reach like max size, and then they dissipate on their own. And you might think, oh, well, that's kind of just a weird arbitrary mechanic to throw in there. But there's a lot of movement in this fight. And again, now imagine that you've got him to 66% health. At this point, he will phase again, and you'll see that those 4 big Guardians spawn. But now, those Guardians are surrounded by these orbs. And if you haven't dealt with the orbs, then the orbs are going to make it really tricky to get the damage to actually kill them before they get to Gorseville. And that's is basically where we keep failing. That is where we're struggling. What I'm finding is really cool about the raids, though, at the moment, maybe I've got the temperament for it, I'm not 100% sure, but rather than being frustrated about, like, the losses and stuff, rather than being frustrated about this difficulty, I've come away from the raids to record this video for you guys right now with a really great sense of optimism, of thinking, look at all these cool little things that we've managed to do. When we first encountered that 33% phase mechanic, for example, it seemed insane to us. We were like, how is this even possible? How can we do this? And then you realize, oh, you play into the emobes and suddenly you're doing much better. And I have a lot of inspiration for new plans for us, new ideas, new comps we can try, new builds that we can try messing around with to get as much damage as we can and still play into these mechanics. I think that's what's really fun about the raids. That's why I'm excited to go into them again tomorrow. And I've missed that. I used to experience that so often in GW1 when I'd come up against something I'd struggle with, or some specific like low man farm or something, endlessly theory crafting and thinking about PvE builds. I haven't experienced that in Guild Wars 2 for a long time, if ever. And overall, it's just, it's been everything that I wanted it to be. I really didn't think that I would go, actually, based on the betas, into Heart of Thorns and continue playing this Auramancer build, right? Like, that I thought was so fun, had so many synergies, had such a cool concept behind it, but, you know, I thought was ultimately useless or wouldn't have a place in Guild Wars 2, and I feel like, I don't know, man, I feel like it has a place. Maybe it is super outclassed by druids who can pump up the, you know, the max DPS of everyone else by so much. Maybe it still isn't offering so much in terms of its actual auras, but I've been having a lot of fun. We've had success so far, and I'd really like to see the end of the raid. I'll talk more about it as days go by, but I hope you guys enjoyed the footage. I hope you enjoyed my little bit of discussion here. It's been a long day. I'm going to hit the hay and get back at it at some point tomorrow. Let me know what your experiences have been, and if you guys haven't played the raids, you want to hear more about it, the comments is probably a great place to look. Thanks very much for watching, guys. This has been a big patch. Lots of fun. I'll see you tomorrow, and I can't wait.